Chapter 4, Section 3, Introduction to Polynomials. In this section, we're going to talk about polynomials, and we're going to classify them and tell the degree of them, and we're going to learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide them. So, a polynomial is a monomial, which is just one, or a finite sum or difference of monomials. So, in other words, a polynomial can consist of one term or a whole bunch of terms. And I know that I'm going from one to multiple terms if I have an addition or subtraction sign. So for example, 4x squared is a monomial because there's only one term, no addition and subtraction. 3x squared minus 2x minus 4 is a trinomial because there are three terms, and these terms are separated by these subtraction signs. And then 14, of course, is a one-term polynomial, which is a monomial as well. And so on the test, what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to add, subtract, multiply, and divide these polynomials, and then I'm going to ask you to classify them. Classify your answer. So if you just see one term, it's going to be a monomial. Two terms is going to be a binomial. Three terms is going to be a trinomial, and we're just going to agree that 4 terms or more is going to be a polynomial. Poly means many, and so these are Latin prefixes. Mono means one, bi means two, tri means 3, poly means many. So if I ask you to classify each one of these polynomials, well, the first one I see two terms. I see a x squared and a negative 4, and so this is a binomial. For the next one, I just see one term, no addition and subtraction, so this is a monomial. For the next one, again, I see one term, which is a negative 6, so this is a monomial as well. And for the next one, I see 3 terms, 1, 2, 3, and so this is a trinomial. And for the last one, I see 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. So we could say that this is a quadrinomial, but more or less it's a polynomial, many terms. And so this is just memorization. You just have to memorize monomial, binomial, trinomial, and polynomial. Okay, parts of terms. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to identify the coefficients, the variables, and the exponents. You have heard me use these terms multiple times, so this should not be a problem for you. Each one of these are monomials, and so for the term, I want you to tell me what is the coefficient, variable, and exponent. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little table, coefficient, variable, exponent. And so the coefficient for the first one is going to be 5, the variable is going to be x, and the exponent for the variable is 2. For the next one, the coefficient is negative 3. The variable can be whatever you want it to be. You can choose any letter from A through Z, and so I'm going to choose A for atoms. And then the exponent is going to be 0, because remember, anything to the 0 power is 1, and so we have negative 3 to the times a to the 0 power, which is negative 3 times 1, which is negative 3. So if you don't see a variable, it has an exponent of a variable of 0. And so this one, you have a coefficient of 6. Your variable is x. But now when you do see a variable, your exponent's understood to be 1. So if you don't see a variable, the exponent for the variable is supposed to be 0. If you do see a variable, your exponent is 1. Alright, so single terms that contain variables with only whole numbers as exponents are called monomials. We've already discussed that. So the next thing we're going to discuss is degree. So again, on the test, I'm going to ask you to add, subtract, multiply, and divide these polynomials, and for your answer, you're going to have to classify it. Classify means to monomial, binomial, trinomial, or polynomial. And then I'm also going to ask you to tell me the degree. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to find the degree of a monomial, a one-term polynomial. And what you're going to do is you're going to add, sum means to add, Find the sum of the exponents of the variables only. So for example, 7xy, x has an exponent of 1 and y has an exponent of 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2, and therefore the degree of this monomial is 2. The degree of this monomial, 14a squared b to the first power, is 3 because 2 plus 1 is 3. So remember, you're adding the exponents of the variables only. And so in 14, we don't see, or in the next one for 14, we don't see a variable. And so that variable is 0, or the degree is 0. Here we do see a variable, and the exponent's understood to be 1, and so the degree of this term is 1. So the reason why we're doing monomials first is because now we're going to move into polynomials. To find the degree of a polynomial, you're going to find the degree of the term with the highest degree in the polynomial. So for example, if you have a monomial, you're going to add the exponents of the variable, and that's the degree of your monomial. However, if you have anything higher than a monomial, such as a binomial or trinomial or a polynomial, what you're going to do is you're going to find the degree of each term separately. So the degree of this first term, 4x squared y to the first power, has a degree of 3. And this next term, 2x to the first power times y to the first power, has a degree of 2. And so what you're going to do is you're going to go with the highest degree in the polynomial. And so notice the degree of this whole entire binomial is 3 because that's the highest degree term that I have in the whole entire polynomial. So for example, here I have a trinomial. Notice the degree for the trinomial is 2. Reason being is because find the degree of each term separately. The degree of the first term is 2. The degree of the middle term is 1. The degree of the last term is 0. The highest degree you see is 2, and therefore the degree of this whole entire trinomial is 2. Okay, one more time, let's evaluate. Again, we've been doing this since chapter 1. So to evaluate this polynomial, if we have 3 times negative 2 to the third power, remember, you're doing order of operations, so we've got to do the exponents first. Don't multiply and then do the exponents. So 3 times negative 2 to the third power is going to be negative 8, and so this is going to be negative 24. For letter B, we have 2 times 3 squared minus 5 times 3 minus 3. Order of operations tells me I've got to do that exponent first, so 3 squared is going to be 9. Now I can do my multiplication. 2 times 9 is 18, minus 5 times 3 is 15, minus 3. And when I do my addition subtraction from left to right, I get 0. Okay, arrange the terms in descending order. Descending means going from highest to lowest. And remember, when we're arranging these terms for descending order, we're looking at the exponents of the variables only. And so you're going to start with your highest exponent first and then move down the line. So for this one, for the first term, your exponent of your variable is 1. For the next one, your exponent for the variable, you don't see 1, so it's going to be x to the 0 power. And then for your next one, you have x to the second. So you're going to put the highest exponent first. So we have x squared. And then this 3x comes next, but the sign in front of the number, please remember this, the sign in front of the number goes with that number. So since this is a positive 3x to the first power, I need to put a plus 3x, so you need a sign in between your two terms. And for here, I have a negative 4. So that has to be a negative 4. And now it's in descending order. You have 2, 1, 0. So let's try the next one. The first one, find the highest degreed exponent, which is going to be that 3 right here. So the first one is going to be a negative 2x to the third power. It's a negative 2 initially, so again, it has to stay negative 2. Sign for the number goes with that number. My next one is going to be this negative 5x squared. The next one is going to be a positive 4x. And then the next one is going to be a positive 5. So look at your exponents. You have 3, 2, 1, 0, descending order. Okay, the next thing we're going to have is combining like terms. Remember from chapter 1, like terms are they have to have the same variable and the same exponent. Remember, your coefficient just tells you how many of each that you've got. So for example, here I've got 3x squares plus 5 more x squares is going to give me a total of 8x squares. But down here, notice I have x to the thirds and I have just whole numbers. So these are not like terms, so I can't put these together. But what I can put together is I have 4x to the thirds minus 2x to the thirds, which is going to give me 2x to the thirds. And then I have a 2 plus a 5, which is going to give me a positive 7. And again, look, it says collect like terms and list in descending order. So you're going to start with the highest exponent first and then go down from there. So for this one, I'm going to combine the x to the fifths. I have 1/2 x to the fifth minus 3/4 x to the fifth, which is going to be a negative 1/4 x to the fifth. And then I have 4x squared minus 2x squared, which is going to be 2x squared. Alright, so let's look at this last one. Again, we're going to start with the highest exponent, which is going to be the x to the fifth, but I don't have any other x to the fifths to put with it. So I'm just going to bring it over. So I'm going to have negative 3x to the fifth. And then I have a negative 2x to the fourth and a positive 2x to the fourth. Well, negative 2 plus 2 goes to 0. And don't write the 0x to the fourth, because 0 times anything is 0, and so it just goes away. We learned that in chapter 2. And then we have 16 and 19, which is going to be 25. So we have a negative 3x to the fifth plus 25. Alright, let's try again. Collect like terms and list in descending order. Here we have 7x minus 1x. 7x minus 1x, remember there's a 1 here. 7x minus 1x is going to be 6x. And then we have 5 to the third minus, or 5x to the third minus 1x to the third is going to be 4x to the third. And I don't have anything to combine with that 4, so we're just going to bring it over. The next one, again, start with the highest exponent. So we have 3/4 x to the third minus 1 x to the third, which is going to be negative 1/4 x to the third. And then we have a positive 4x squared. We don't have anything to combine it with. There's no other like term, so we'll just bring it over. And the same with the plus 7. Now let's look at the last one. Let's start with the x to the fourth, because we want these in descending order. So we have 14x to the fourth and negative 4x to the fourth, which is going to be 10x to the fourth. And then we have a negative x and a negative 7x. Well, negative 1 and negative 7 is negative 8x. And then we have a 1/2 minus 1, which is going to be negative 1/2. Alright, so here are your practice problems. Up in the top, we're evaluating each one of these polynomials where x is 2 and x is negative 4. These are two separate problems. So you're going to do each one of these twice. So for example, number 1, you're going to evaluate negative 5x plus 2 where x is negative 2 and come up with a number. And then you're going to evaluate negative 5x plus 2 where x is 4 and come up with a number. So you're going to have two answers for each one of these. One where x is negative 2 and one where x is 4. And then down here you're just combining like terms, and notice I want you to arrange these in descending order, classify them, and tell the degree of your answer. And then the answers are on this slide. Bring them into class if you have any problems.